So let's take a look at some examples of functions and the store procedures. Let me first create a table with some data, our familiar instructor table with some data, so that we can have some data to work on to show in the store procedure. Now let me create a simplest function definition first. This function will be, it's going to call get current date, and which does one simple thing. It returns the current date. Of course, as you understand that we have the current date function from Postgres. So there's really no need for us to use this get current date, but I'm going to use this just as an example. It starts with a create or replace function row, this row. The number line 1 starts with a create or replace function clause where you define the function name. Line 2 defines the return value of date. And line 9 is a language, PLSP, PG/SQL, these are all straightforward. And between line 3 and line 8 is the S block. You can see line 4, line 8, there are $sign, $sign. And this $sign basically is a keyword, PostgreSQL keyword, to tell PostgreSQL that between these $sign, between these two $sign rows, these are the values, these are the statements that's going to be used in the function definition. So if you want to create your own function, you just copy and paste this structure and write and fill in your function name, your return type, and your data type, your SQL statements, right? For us, I'm going to create this function. And let's see what we get. We get 2021. Remember, this is what we get. YYYYMMDD, right? So this is how you define a function and how you use it. You use this in the select statement. Now, what if I want to make it more complex? I think we already talked about the first thing we want to add is probably an argument. How about I define an argument like a format? I have a date format. I want to convert the state into a string of certain format. So it will be a format of varchar. Then returns a varchar, right? So now, of course, here I need to use a toChar function with a format. So I'm going to replace the function. Okay, now I'm going to get the current date with, let's say month, day, y. And remember the data output used to be, was YYYMMDD, right? So let's do this select current statement. We are selecting this, and you can see the output now is September 29th, 2021. Now, next thing we want to do, of course, is to use a more complex SQL statement. And if you want to do more complex SQL statement, you will definitely want to introduce variable. So let me drop this store procedure first and try to introduce. Oops, I think I accidentally double clicked it, but that's fine, it's dropped. So let me get another piece of code here. Now this one is a little bit more complex, as you can see. So the first line 1, just like before, was create a table, create a function with a function name and a parameter called iname. It basically is require you to input an instructor name. Then it will return another varchar. It will return varchar, and this varchar will return the instructor affiliation. This varchar is defined in line 2, returns clause, and in line 19 we have the language the class where we define the PLPG/SQL. And now we do the S block. You can see the $sign here. We actually add a name. add a name to this code block. So this is a named code block, $my code block. And inside this named code block, we have the begin end, and then with a declare. This is something new. We have a varchar called the I affiliation. We declare this varchar, and if we have more varchar, we have more variable. We can add a comma or maybe like ID integer, something like this, right? But here we only need one variable. We define it. Then we will select into this I affiliation from instructor. So here, this is the variable. We have a SQL, but we will select the information of this particular instructor. We will select the instructor affiliation into this variable. Then we will return this affiliation. This some words about this affiliation. If a affiliation is a Jedi, then light side, or it's a dark side. Or if you just want to return affiliation, you just do this, right? Without call statement. So, but of course, this won't provide you with any additional information other than the select instructor affiliation statement. So let's just try to make it more complex by introducing a case statement. So now let's compile. Let's create this function code. And now let's select instructor name and get affiliation of instructor name. Let me get it. Let me make it larger. So Obi-Wan Kenobi is on the light side. Anakin Skywalker was on the light side, and Yoda is on the light side. Darth Sidious, of course, dark side. The dark side is more powerful. Okay, so this is how you are going to use a variable inside the code block. And with this variable, how you store information into this variable and utilize later. Now, I think this is pretty much what you need to know about SQL store procedure or functions. And everything you do in the future is just by adding more and more SQL statement. And these SQL statements, including like branching or looping, well, you can find them in the Postgres documentation. So this is something that we are not going to cover. All we are introducing here is the fundamental structure definition of the function and the store procedure. Now, before we finish, let's also run a store procedure. I'm going to copy the store procedure. I think let me drop this first. Oh, I already dropped it, sorry. We are creating a store procedure. As you can see, it's almost the same. Line 1 is still create procedure with a procedure with a affiliation name and the parameter. But what's missing is the returns, because store procedure is not returning anything. Instead, it directly goes to as block with a language class. And within this as block, you still have a micro block code block with a variable definition, and you still have the select into a variable statement. And one thing to note, because store procedure are not returning anything, either it will complete something, some information, and you have to save it into a table. You have to do an insert certain information into a table, or you have to raise notice. You basically, this will print out something. This instructor is from light side or dark side, right? So let's create it. And then create it. Then another difference between store procedure and function is that you do not select, because store procedure does not have a value, does not return a value. So you cannot select. You cannot select anything you select, it will be a null. There's no point of selecting from a store procedure. Instead, you call it. You call to see what's a Yoda's affiliation, and it tells you, it basically give you a notice. This is what we try to do here. We raise a notice, and you get a notice. The instructor is from light side of the force, right? So this is the difference between store procedure and function. Store procedure does not return the value. And because of that, you don't select a store procedure, you call it. And because of that, you don't use a return statement in the store procedure. Instead, you create other means of output, either save some information to a table, or you use a raise notice and print out some information. And now that we are done, I'm going to drop this and drop table instructor. Which ends our session, our video.